Call this meeting of the James City County Board of Supervisors to order for a business meeting. Mr. Stevens, call the roll, please.
Mr. Hippel?
Here.
Ms. Null?
Present.
Ms. Larson?
Here.
Mr. McGlennon?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Here.
All present.
Okay, we start right off into presentations, and our first presentation is James City County Clean Commission 2024 Annual Report. Peg Borman, Vice Chair of the Clean County Commission.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Stevens, and all the ladies and gentlemen here. I'm Peg Borman, and I live at 17 Settlers Lane in downtown Lightfoot. Oh, that's my trash talk. Anyway, I'm very happy to be able to present to you all today the Clean County Commission report for 2024 as a vice chair of the commission now. I don't have any other commissioners here that I know of, but I would like to thank my staff that has helped us through everything, and that's Andrea Case, who is our coordinator, and Regina Jackson, who helps us with all of our typing and so forth. The Clean County Commission, which is, we have Rachel West currently as a commission chair, and she's responsible for the litter programs. I take care of cleanups. Kevin Radcliffe is over recycling. Charles Lauderman is on beautification grants. Heath Richardson is over youth education. Tim Stanley is over green business, and David Patterson follows with the gardens and the pollinators. Next slide is, you'll see here we have a lot of trash here, so I'm going to talk a little trash. The commission holds at least 3 organized cleanups every year. And in the center is a representative of the Great American Cleanup, which is the end of March, last weekend in March. To the left is the annual countywide litter cleanup. And as you can see, it's James City Ruatan Club. Of course, I wanted that to be represented. And then we have Clean the Bay Day, which is down below that picture. And then we have accumulation of other, the pickups from some of the trashes, cleanups that we've had. In 2024, these events engaged 179 volunteers who collected almost 4,000 pounds of litter that was equivalent to 166 pounds or bags. For the Clean the Bay, this was the first year that we've been able to have water cleanup, and that was done by the county stormwater staff by kayaking on a Powhatan Creek. In addition to all these cleanups, commissioners attend many of outreach and events during the year, and some of those is with James City Parks and Recs. Harvest Fest was out at Chickahominy, a Riverfront Park, Boo Bash at Jamestown's Beach, and this past year, Halloween with the Heroes at the police station. Our 4th annual Earth Day, annual Arbor Day, plant a tree. We celebrated with the Williamsburg Botanical Gardens in Freedom Park Arboretum, and I hope I can pronounce this. We planted a silky camellia, which is the Greek word, I guess, Stiratus melancondonum. Y'all make out what you want to on that one. The next slide. November 15th is America's Recycle Day, and that's a day that we try to get closest to for our annual repair fair and recycling expo. The recycling fair we started in 2016. The repair fair we started in 2021. We collected over 50 items to be repaired, and that was saved from the landfill. And most items we've had so far in our collections. We had over 200 cars that came through, and we collected over 200 pounds of soft plastic. James City Lions Club helped with that. And we collected 100 pounds of glass for recycling, which was Owens, Illinois. We had over 1,000 pounds of e-waste, which is the commuters and computers and phones and so forth, recycling by the junk pluggers. And then we also had a half truck full of household goods by the Habitat for Humanity Restore. And we had 87 pairs of shoes that went to Souls for Souls, 10 gallons of food scraps for composting, and we had 12 tires with 4 on a rim. Next slide. This year we supported the Waterwise Garden by advertising their work sessions, supplying them with compost to enhance the soil, and replacing the cigarette butt receptacle at the facility. This garden is located at the Human Services Building, which is a highly visited site with over 15,000 visitors each year, and the garden brings some beauty and comfort to those who are dealing with difficult situations. The Master Gardener leads have really done a great job with providing educational activities for children and community services and resources in English and Spanish, and that event's on the right side. The Pollinator Garden, the Pollinator Garden's on the right, showcase the native plants that were planted at Veterans Park, and this, the host was hosted the first time in 2024. In June, the garden held a Pollinator Palooza, and we attended 2 events to bring attention to the garden and the positive impact of native plants. Project leads worked with Parks and Rec to have an event in collaboration with the Longest Day hosted by Parks and Recreations. And it was well attended by a lot of families. Next slide. Will Barnes Day is June 14th. It was established in 2017 after his death in 2016. And he left a legacy for our county as he served on the commission from 1999 to 2016. And he was a member of the Ruitans. So at this event, the Ruitan Club presented the Jim Robertson Will Barnes Scholarship. Jim Robertson, as some of you know that he started with the James City Ruitan Club as the first committee chair that evolved to be the Clean County Commission in 1981. He started in 1979. And this was, we hold this annually since Will passed away, and we dedicated it to, in 2017, the shelter. And we've been honored to have his widow with us, Barbara Barnes. And this is a fun way for us to thank our volunteers and with picnic and games and music. Next slide, please. This is Pollinator Gardens, and this shows the picture of the Greater First Colony. We had only 2 grants that were awarded this year. This is a before picture and then the after picture. And then there was another project that was completed in Newtown. Next slide. Clean County Commission sponsors the along with Virginia Peninsula Clean Business Forum with Hampton, Newport News, and York County. These awards are presented for environmental stewardship and for beautification efforts on a quarterly basis. And in our 2024, our winners was the Drying Company from Stonehouse, Ball Metal Beverage Corporation from Roberts, Feel Happy from Berkeley, and Small Cakes from Williamsburg, Jamestown. I might add, Feel Happy applied a couple of times, but she was in York County at that time. So when she finally moved over to the Williamsburg crossing, she became James City. So we were able to give her the award at that time. We really need to have more businesses that have adopted clean initiatives and enacted environmentally friendly practices to apply online, because maybe you planted a native landscaping or your restaurant provides plastic straws upon request, but you can, as board members, can also appoint anyone, which we have taken your recommendations in the past, but we're coming up on March when we're going to have another one, and we don't have an applicant right now, so we need somebody. I like to go out and visit those businesses once they've been nominated. Next slide. I want to thank all of our volunteers. To the left over here is a couple that helped us with Souls for Souls, and they've been very instrumental in helping with a lot of the things that we've had. And the lower picture is two groups from Richmond that came down and cleaned up the Grove area. This was their second year to come down, and there's so many ways that you can get involved in a commission, and it can fit into your life very easily. We've had 1,066 volunteer hours, which equates to $17,482.40. That's putting it right down to the minute. Anyway, we have 4,866 event attendees, and we all need to be a part of the commission. We still need Powhatan, but but we can take anybody's recommendations from any of the districts. But that 17,000 was allowed us to do things that we didn't have to hire staff for. And we've had over 5,000 who have attended these events that we've hosted or attended. And so volunteering with us can include many events. And we've got a new program coming up that we want to encourage residents, next slide, to reserve, you can reserve up to 5 native tree seedlings online, and any group or organization can request more. But they're going to be shipped to us in March, and we're excited to launch this initiative, working with General Services and Grounds Division and the Parks and Rec Department, and I'd like to recognize them for their help. So now I'd like to have a video played that promoted the commission and encourage new members.
I got involved in the commission because I wanted to serve my community.
I would say I'm more of a doer.
I'm very passionate about the environment. I'm very passionate about making sure that we live on a clean, healthy planet.
My mother, Eula Radcliffe, was one of the founders along with Peg Borman. You know, I thought I'd keep it in a family thing going, so whenever we have events to go to, like the Fido Fest or the Chickahominy event that they have every year, we give them brochures or information about what we do. Hopefully that we can get some people to actually sign up to volunteer.
My favorite event we do is actually our Recycling Expo and Repair Fair. It's plastic bag recycling. It's fixing your appliances that you have at home so you're not throwing them into the landfills. Composting, people can learn about that. Shredding their important documents.
Every quarter, we have what we call a breakfast forum, where we meet with York County, Newport News, and Hampton, and we recognize different companies or different organizations that's doing their part as far as recycling and sustainability.
Anyone is welcome to join. Anyone is welcome to volunteer. It's all about doing the little things. They all build into one big thing.
I want to say that the Community Awareness Award went to the video team for the National Association of Telecommunications Offices and Advisors, and they also received honorable mention in event and program promotion for the Repair Fair and Recycling Expo. So I want to congratulate them for this and thank them for their help on that, helping us to get the word out that we are trying to recruit people. So is there any questions?
Questions for Peg?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but I want to thank the Clean County Commission for all the hard work they put in. I went to the repair fair this year and saw a gentleman from, I think he's from Isle of Wight or Suffolk, who used to come over here and ride his bicycle on our trails and loved it so much that he volunteered to repair bicycles as part of the repair fair. Just terrific. So many people donated their time to help repair clothing or jewelry or fix tools or small appliances. Just great. The Will Barnes event is always a wonderful opportunity to thank the folks who participated in cleanup, and you all just do a great job. So thanks very much for everything you've done.
Thank you for that. We appreciate it, and we do try to help the citizens understand what we're doing. And I think that Jim Robertson, knowing him like I did, I think he'd be very pleased with what we're doing today. So.
Thank you. I mean, this community means so much to me, and I know the beauty of this community means so much to you, and you have truly dedicated yourself. I mean, and that's no small feat. It's a lot of work to organize people. If you were ready to not chair it anymore, I'm glad that Rachel, she's very enthusiastic, and so I'm glad she's doing that. But the thumbprint that you've had on this will forever be here. So thank you for this report, and thank you for continuing to talk trash, because it burns me up too. So I'm with you.
Well, I get ridiculed sometimes for talking trash,
Well,
but when they know what I'm doing, I think they understand and take back their snide remarks.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm very pleased that I can come and give this presentation to you. And I thank you all for your support and helping us become a cleaner and better community to live, work, and play in.
Thank you, Peg. Thank you. And I'm ready to pick up trash whenever you call me. Just, I have my thing, you know.
Well, we'll be doing it again at the end of March.
Yes, ma'am, I'll be
End
there.
of April.
Got it.
And
And I thank you, Peg, for the good report, and I will say to my fellow supervisors, I think it's partly our job to help pass the word and try to help recruit volunteers, let people know that this is some way they can give back to the community. And hopefully when it comes time for some vacancies on the committee or some additional people on the committee or whatever, we'll have a list of people we can call on.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, our second presentation is Mr. Ed Harris, CEO of the Williamsburg Tourism Council.
Good afternoon,
Good
Board
afternoon.
of Supervisors. Today I am joined by one of my Visit Williamsburg colleagues, Josue Ayala, is here with me today. And we could jump right in if you want to advance to the next slide. The way I'm going to structure my tourism update this afternoon is going to be broken out by where we've been recently as an organization, where we are at today, and where we're headed. So we can advance to the next slide. I'm going to start out with some data. If you want to click again to the next slide. And my first slide here is a recap of the transient tax, and better known as the lodging tax, the $2 tax that our guests pay when they stay overnight here in the historic triangle, whether that's a hotel room, motel room, bed and breakfast, Airbnb, campground, timeshare, anywhere you stay overnight. That tax is collected, and $1, of course, goes to the municipalities, and then $1 comes to Visit Williamsburg. And it's great to see that not only this past year did we see some growth in the transient tax that was collected, as well as the prior year. You can see on the screen there, highlighted in green, the increase was about 6.7%, which is great news. And we can go to the next slide because I do want to drill down into our motel and hotel partners. We closed the year as a lodging community with the hotels and motels on a very positive note. You can see there that the occupancy level at those hotels and motels also increased to close out 2024 compared to the prior fourth quarter of 2023. And if you advance to the next slide, what does that equate to? Well, the hotels and motels sold an additional 18,000 room nights compared to that same fourth quarter of the prior year. And so that's the good news when you look at the fourth quarter and how our hotels and motels performed. For the entire calendar year, our hotels and motels business was flat, which tells us that looking back to the first slide that I shared, along with other destinations you can visit around the country, those trends are real of visitors considering places to stay like timeshares, like bed and breakfasts, like Airbnbs, like campgrounds. And so we just need to make sure that we can continue to grow the business at our hotels and motels across the historic triangle. So we're looking at different ways going forward where maybe we can increase their business as trends continue to evolve. So we can go to the next slide. This is a look at how our hotels and motels performed on weekends, specifically in the month of December. And you can see that Williamsburg, Virginia came in first place when it comes to the occupancy percentage of our hotels and motels, specifically for Saturday evening. Williamsburg, Virginia was also high on the list in the state for Friday evening. The opportunity for us going forward is to see how we can raise our destination in the rankings during the other days of the week, because unfortunately our numbers do drop like a lot of destinations when we look at Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, even Thursday. There's lots of opportunity to fill up our hotel rooms. But the good news is that our destination from a tourism standpoint is as strong as any other destination in the state when it comes to the weekends. We can advance to the next slide. One of the new things that Visit Williamsburg and the team rolled out this past fourth quarter was our historic holiday pass. You may have heard about this. This was a mobile pass that could be downloaded on your phone that included over 30 different discounts and deals to our hotels, restaurants, attractions. We had all of the holiday events listed on the mobile pass that were taking place across the historic triangle between Black Friday in November all the way through January 2nd. This was a new initiative for Visit Williamsburg, and I'm happy to share that we had close to 2,000 downloads. We think there's lots of opportunity to build off of that next year. And we're looking at the data. You can see there on the pie chart, the top right corner of the slide, we're seeing folks from neighboring states who are downloading this historic holiday pass who want to come into town in the month of December and take advantage of these deals that we've worked with the various business owners on. So whether it's North Carolina, Maryland, PA, New Jersey, even Florida, people were downloading the mobile pass for their visit. We can also dig into the data and look at among the 30 plus places that were offering some sort of deal or incentive, what were the more popular places that our visitors went to. And you can see there places like the Christmas shop, of course, even Baskin-Robbins and some other places rose to the top. We're going to roll this out again in 2025. It'll be the second go-around for our historic holiday pass. We have a lot of learnings from the initial rollout to make it even better. But we're going to continue to look at these newer, modern ways to make the visitor experience more fun, easier to get around the historic triangle, and hopefully spend a few dollars to help our local economy. And with that, we can go to the next slide. So that's sort of a recap of how we finished the fourth quarter of last year. And now we can look at some things that we've been looking at more recently. If you want to advance to the next slide, please. We can see how the occupancy numbers for our hotels and motels performed for the month of January. And this chart here shows the growth versus a year ago. So comparing January 2025 to January 2024, like a few other destinations in Virginia, we did have positive growth when it comes to occupancy. And we're hoping that trend continues. And when we look at the February numbers, we see a similar result, although I will say, due to some recent snowstorms, I'm not sure that tourism has increased for the month of February, but we are looking at that very closely. But we're also encouraged about some things I'll talk about in a few minutes that are coming up this spring and summer, which we think can also help bolster tourism. We can go to the next slide. I do want to cover, because we've had a lot of questions about how are things going on the sports front. And so if we go to the next slide, actually one more slide, I want to talk first about all of the outdoor sports tournaments that are held here in the Historic Triangle across lots of different sports, really. And we look at the tournaments that are lined up for April, May, June, July, and August of this year, and you can see that there are very few weekends that don't currently have a major tournament that's going to take place. And this is huge business for our local economy. Some of these tournaments consist of close to 100 teams, okay? And so when you have 100 teams and families and coaches come into the area to compete, they've got to find a place to eat, a place to stay overnight, things to do beyond the games on the field. And so we feel really good about where we're at right now, looking ahead to spring, summer, based on many of these tournaments that have been secured. And this has been the result of a lot of hard work, not only from Morgan Cordell, who works at our team over at Visit Williamsburg, but working closely with all the Parks and Rec people across the Historic Triangle to land these tournaments. And some of these tournaments have been here before, and they keep happening, but there are quite a few new things as well. So we can go to the next slide. I do want to touch briefly on the Greater Williamsburg Sports and Events Center. If we go to the next slide, we already have some bookings for the new center. Realizing that it won't open for another 18 months or so, hopefully 17 or 16 months from now, depending on how the construction timeline has changed, we can see that we've secured some fairly large events for 2027. You can see there we have a gymnastics competition that has agreed to come and compete at the Greater Williamsburg Sports and Events Center in January of 2027. Over 1,200 athletes will compete. And that's great because, like a lot of mid-Atlantic tourism destinations, January and February and even March to an extent tend to be softer months for our lodging community, mainly because of the weather. And now that we have a major indoor sports and events center, we feel good that our numbers for our hotels and motels will improve for the colder months of January, February, and March as we bring these types of events to town. You can see there's a basketball tournament as well. They have booked 7 weekends at the new sports center for 2027 with 1,200 athletes per weekend. Hype volleyball is another one. And this is a list of 3 events, but we are actively in conversations with lots of other events that are interested in coming to town. So very encouraged about the future. I wish this facility could open tomorrow, but we are getting lots of interest, and it's very exciting, especially when you think about the sheer economic impact that this facility is going to bring to our community. Okay, we can go to the next slide. One of the things in tandem with trying to recruit more events to the Sports and Events Center, we are working with a Virginia-based advertising agency called White 64. We are in the very early exploration phase of looking at branding options for Sports Williamsburg. We can go to the next slide. This is just a snapshot, one of the more recent renderings of how the layout will look at our indoor sports facility. You can see there that there are, 2, 4, 6, 8. There's a lot of basketball. I can't even count them all in the interest of time. But it's very exciting. This will be a game changer, no pun intended, well, pun intended, for our local economy. You can go to the next slide, starting to see some other visual renderings of even the conference space that we'll be able to leverage, whether it's teams or non-sports events that are interested in coming here. The next slide also shows just more space where we can have different types of events and meetings. If you go to the next slide, you can see just additional renderings of what to expect when the sports facility opens in mid-2026. I think that's the last slide in the sports section. I'm sorry, there's one more. I've talked a lot about sports today, but it's important for us all to remember that we really want the community to benefit from the Sports and Events Center. We're going to try to look at ways to develop some events when it opens up so that the community can come in and experience it. We're also looking at the space beyond sports and thinking about what are some other types of events that we could hold in the space that could bring economic impact to the area, whether that's an arts and crafts show or a quilt show or a fishing show or any type of show that could come in with their group, hopefully spend the night, go to our restaurants, go to our shops, and impact our local economy in a positive way. So these are just some of the statistics that we will be sharing with groups who may be interested in using the center for things that are beyond sports. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so the last part of my update is some things on the horizon, where we're headed. If you want to go to the next slide. Within our organization, we are upgrading visitwilliamsburg.com. We're partnering with a company called Ripe, and Ripe provides booking engines to destinations who want to be able to have visitors book hotel rooms on your destination website. So if you go to the next slide, you can see how some other cities and towns have been working with Ripe to include a booking area right on their website, so to make it easier for guests to book their trip. I think there's one more or two more slides. Thank you. This shows how we will be able to show hotel rates for the first time at visitwilliamsburg.com and show the proximity of these hotels to places like the Sports and Events Center or other events happening throughout the calendar year. I think the last slide on here is something we're excited about. This is an example from Franklin, Tennessee, where RIPE gives you the capability to develop customized landing pages for events. And so we will be able to develop customized pages for any event, whether it's a sports event or a non-sports event, or any event really in the historic triangle that we want to customize, and then share out a link for people to book their stay around the timing of the events. And the next slide is just one really exciting thing on the horizon. This morning I had a chance to go to the official hard hat tour of the Busch Gardens Big Bad Wolf, Wolf's Revenge roller coaster. And let's just say that although it's being deemed a family roller coaster, this is a big roller coaster. I was very shocked at the size of this family roller coaster. I think it's going to be awesome. We can't wait as a team at Visit Williamsburg to be able to promote this shiny new asset from a tourism standpoint. The timing, the opening for this new roller coaster is set for spring. I tried to get a firm date out of the group this morning, but we're still going with spring for now, but it's going to be great. Really looking forward to seeing that grand opening. We can go to the next slide. Also, the sister property, Water Country, is also opening up something new this year. High Tide Harbor, is opening up. All of this is part of the Busch Gardens 50th anniversary. As you may know, Busch Gardens opened in 1975, and they've got lots of fun programming lined up to coincide with some of these new attractions this year. If we go to the next slide, you may have heard about, from an arts and culture standpoint, there's a lot of buzz around the Michelangelo exhibit that's going to be over at William & Mary for March, April, and May of this year. We can keep going. And then, of course, a little further down the road is the 250th, which we are meeting right now to talk about how we're going to position our destination among other historical destinations you can visit during the 250th. You can see on the screen here that we do have a new tagline for the 250th, which is "Where America's Journey Begins." So you'll start to see where America's journey begins from Visit Williamsburg, starting in this calendar year, as we start to build excitement and momentum for what we're hoping to be a record tourism year in 2026. So if we advance to the next slide, the first time we started to show the 250th branding was last month in Philadelphia at the annual American Bus Association conference, where there are thousands of people to descend on this conference who make decisions for motor coach trips, school bus trips, lots of different bus type of trips from around the country who want to plan trips to various destinations. And if you click on the next slide, we brought George Washington with us to Philadelphia, along with Fife and Drum, introduced the new branding, had a chance to show some video, some future events, and just really put a stake in the ground as a key place for people to plan a trip to for the 250th at this convention that was held in Philadelphia in January. And I think, okay, a couple more slides, I promise. You can just see how the branding plays out, whether it's on a website or even on a lapel pin or stickers, et cetera. We're looking at different ways to get the 250th branding out there and get groups and families to think about our destination as a must-stop or must-see place during 2026. So with that, I know I kind of rushed through a lot of content, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the board?
I would just take a moment to say, Ed, he came from Lancaster to head up Visit Williamsburg, which we are thrilled about. We think it's an excellent hire, and you hit the ground running. We've got a lot going on. and including just having to deal with your board that you deal with, but with the new Sports and Event Center opening and with America's 250th, it's a very busy time, and I think we're going to be led very well by your leadership. And I appreciate you coming out and giving this update. Tourism is very, very important to this community, to James City County, and I think the more information that we can provide, the better. So I just appreciate you bringing Josue with you too, who does so much, and I appreciate everything that he does to help our organization as well. So.
If I could add comments too, I've had an opportunity to work with Mr. Harris some over the past 6 months, and I will tell you, he's been great. He's jumped into projects we've got going on with the sports center or other. He's been willing to talk, listen. He's been willing to push on ideas. If I left it up to Ed, I think he would fill up the sports center every day of the week with something that brings somebody to spend the night. I think there's a compromise there. I have assured him we're willing to work on those kind of different ideas that we had not considered. We do want to fill up our hotels. We do want to help the community and those that support our tourism business, particularly in those off times of the year. And I think he brings some great ideas for that, balancing the need for the community to have court space and access to the facility as well. But I really have enjoyed working with him and appreciate his time and effort of being here today as well.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question about the information on bookings that we're seeing? Is that mostly hotel and motel bookings as opposed to timeshares? And do we have any way of finding out what's going on with the timeshare community?
Great question. Hotels and motels definitely is the lion's share of the overnight stays, but the timeshare business is, I think, bigger than people realize. We are digging into that data as much as we can. Unlike hotels and motels who provide their monthly sales data to the Smith Travel Research Company, which is the sort of the main industry leader of reporting in the hospitality sector, timeshares don't need to share their information, or they choose not to. And so it's tough to get a firm grasp on just how important timeshares are to a place like the Historic Triangle. But the indicators point to the fact that the transient tax that I talked about at the very beginning of this meeting shows that people are choosing timeshares, Airbnbs, traditional bed and breakfast, campgrounds, in addition to our hotels and motels. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well,
specifically,
and I think that might be a good opportunity to pick up some of at least an impression of what's going on with the industry. And I congratulate you on all the success that we've been seeing already. And we'll hope that next time you present, we'll see a lot of James City venues listed among those top ones benefiting from the sales.
Notice that too.
Right.
Also, I think it is worth noting that you are starting, and you're getting more aggressive. That's a good word, with reaching out to the hotel motel community. You're going to do some things where you bring them into the office, have some meetings, talk about what's important to them, what's important to you as the marketing for the area. So that's something that you're starting to work on as well.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. We are trying to just be in front of our stakeholders more going forward. And so on March 5th, it's a specific meeting we're having with our hotel general managers and directors of sales across the Historic Triangle. So we're having a meeting where we're going to be sharing information, hearing from them how things are going at their hotel and motel properties, and that's something new this year. We're hoping to be able to meet with them at least quarterly, if not more often than that, going forward. And also, the other thing I wanted to mention is we do have another sports advisory committee meeting that's coming up for that group of leaders in the Historic Triangle, also in March, on March 19th. And so that's just an effort to make sure that we're on the same page across the Historic Triangle in terms of the developments that are happening at the sports facility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Chair Eisenhower, if I could just take this opportunity to make a note that all of the Visit Williamsburg board meetings are open. And our next one is 1 o'clock on March 18th at the Revolutionary Museum in Yorktown. And also we hold finance meetings that are also open. So if anybody's interested, they can reach out to me and I'll be happy to provide the information. But all of that information should be on our website too. And our meeting agendas and everything. So
Thank you. That's
thank you.
good information. Appreciate that. Okay, we now move to the consent calendar. Today's consent calendar consists of the following items. Number one, acceptance of funds, $4,167, Virginia Forfeited Asset Sharing Program. Number two, grant award, $86,000, Fort Monroe Defense Base Closure and Realignment Act Funding Homeless Support Services Funds. Number three, grant award, $369,852, Virginia Stormwater Local Assistance Fund. Number four, agreement to purchase 8736 and 8744 Pocahontas Trail. Number five, initiation of consideration of amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding sexually oriented businesses. And number six, minutes adoption. Number seven, remote participation policy. Does anyone wish any item removed? If not, could I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll move the consent agenda if no one has anything.
Mr. Stevens, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Ms. Knoll.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we move to board discussions. Number one is financial update for the FY25 second quarter. Cheryl Holland.
Chairman, members of the board, good afternoon. I'm Cheryl
Afternoon.
Holland. I'm the budget manager for the county, and today I'll provide financial updates on the county for the second quarter of FY25, which ended December 31, 2024. This presentation will only focus on the general fund, which covers the county's normal operations. And to start off, we'll first take a look at the county's general fund revenues. Presented here is the county's FY25 revised budget and actual revenues through December 2024. FY24 actual revenues for the same time period are also presented for comparative purposes. The FY25 adopted budget was $255.4 million, and revisions to the general fund budget reflect uses of fund balance approved during the fiscal year, and that brings us to that $273.5 million total budget on the slide. General property taxes is our largest revenue source, representing approximately 2/3 of our total revenue. This category includes real estate and personal property taxes. The December actuals for general property taxes reflect collections from our first regular property tax billing of the fiscal year, so you have a rough idea as to where we stand at the halfway point. Our second regular property tax billing is June 5th. The increase in FY25 in this category primarily relates to the real estate reassessment. Other revenue types do not reflect the same billing or collection frequency as general property taxes. Other local taxes, for example, include local sales tax, which we receive 2 months in arrears. This means the December numbers just reflect 4 months of revenue. Similarly, the excise taxes, such as meals and lodging, are received 1 month in arrears. So again, the December numbers are only reflecting 5 months worth of revenue so far. I'll also note that the county's business license taxes are included in the other local tax line, and that only has one regular due date each fiscal year. That due date is March 1st, a few days from now. So we'll have a better idea where the county stands in terms of that tax type once we go through the third quarter revenues. Looking at other actuals through December, you can see that our recurring revenues through the state and federal line are holding relatively steady compared to last fiscal year. The increase in charges for services for FY25 in part relates to the increase in the recycling fee from $7 a month to $10.50 per month, and that went into effect in October of 2024 to help offset the costs of the recycling program. Moving to the miscellaneous line item, this revenue type varies year to year and includes proceeds from the sale of vehicles and other property, as well as other miscellaneous funds. Lastly, on that fund balance line, you can see the county has used $24.6 million of fund balance in FY25 for various purposes. This includes the $6.5 million real estate tax credit, support for FY25 CIP and debt service of approximately $12.5 million, outstanding purchase orders from FY24 $1.9 million, support for Settlers Market road improvements of $2.74 million, $500,000 for the purchase of property, and $287,000 for a one-time leave payout for staff. staff. Use of fund balance in FY24 included similar purposes, except for the one-time real estate tax credit that's in effect for FY25. The year-over-year change in Q2, excluding this use of fund balance, was $8.87 million, and that's shown in red at the bottom of the slide. This primarily relates to the real estate reassessment. Switching gears to the spending side of the budget, this slide shows the budget and actuals for the second quarter of FY25. I'll note actuals here includes both expenditures incurred as well as encumbrances through December. If all expenses came in evenly, we would expect to see expenses at around 50% of the budget being used so far. Overall, we're at roughly 53%, with some departments under and some departments over this percentage. We'll talk about the specific departments on the next slide. This line graph shows departments spending in the blue line, and for 2 quarters of FY25 compared to a 50% benchmark in that green line. For those areas tracking above 50%, it's important to note that not all expenses are incurred evenly during the fiscal year. In information technology, for example, equipment maintenance and software contracts often have to be paid in full at the start of the fiscal year, so that's why you'll see that category at 59%. Contributions and transfers at the very end include support to outside agencies, most of which receive their funding at the start of the year. It also includes transfers to other funds, most of which are done in July. Again, so that's why you're seeing that category at 69%. Encumbrances can also cause a high trend because a substantial volume of purchase orders are issued at the beginning of the fiscal year, and the budget feels the full impact of those POs at that time. These timing differences are normal and generally work themselves out during the course of the fiscal year. Are there any questions on the expenditures by department? Not. That concludes my remarks on the first 2 quarters of FY25. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the board?
Thank you. You do an excellent job with these. I really appreciate getting the updates.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
Holland, can I get that clicker?
Which leads us to our next presentation, FY26 to 2030 CIP Projects Discussion, and Mr. Stevens has got the clicker.
This will may be a less formal presentation and more just sort of a follow-up of our budget process. I know Mr. Eisenhower had expressed some interest in sort of how do we get to developing our CIP and our proposed budget. So for me, this is just another step to talk a little bit out loud about where we are. Some of this information you've seen, some of it you have not. I did provide a printout of a few pages of this presentation, so you don't have all of it. You do have this cover sheet. You do have this 5-year CIP, at least the overall summary. Ms. Holland had shared that during your budget retreat and some other times. And I will tell you, as we're working through this, again, it's more about how we develop it. And I did ask Ms. McCarthy and Ms. Holland to add to or correct anything that I might share with you. I want to make sure the information we're providing you is correct. And sometimes my summary may not be the full detail they feel like you need to have. So if they jump up, you'll know why. I've asked them to make sure they interrupt me as needed. So just to come back through what you've seen, you do not have this handout. This is what we presented at the retreat, just the overall request. We then broke these requests into the actual departmental budget items that summarize these different categories in FY26, 27, 28. So these are the requests, not the recommendations, and your handout does have what is behind those requests if you should need those at a later time. So we could talk through that. If you have questions about what is in any of these, I'm happy to talk through that and have that information for you as well. I wanted to come back to the activity we ran you through during the retreat. Rather than sitting in a place and trying to defend which project each of you liked, we gave each of you 6 stickers of various colors, with green being a top priority, blue being a mid-level priority, yellow being a low priority, and then red if you just didn't think we ought to have a project that moved forward. On the sheets, they show up very well in terms of color. Here I can see them pretty well, but they do show at least some groupings of where you felt it was important in terms of prioritizing some of the limited resources that we have. As you were doing this on one side of the room, we had our executive leadership team, our department heads, doing it on the other side of the room. There's a few more of them. They had the same number of stickers, but they show a little more ability to spread it around because you had more personalities and more opinions and a different viewpoint of some of these projects. And I'll come back to where I saw some synergies together and where I saw you in a different area. And then I happen to have a large staff meeting, which is really 80 to 100 of our mid-level and up managers and a lot of our administrative staff. And because this occurred a couple of days with the week following your retreat, I thought it might be an interesting exercise to run it through with them as well. And while you had 2 sheets, we gave them 1 sheet with all the same projects on them in the same order, really the same instruction with dots. It's just a lot more of them in terms of dots. I did try to take, well, we did take these sheets and summarize them to what looks like this, so it's not quite as colorful, but these are all the dots that they put into different projects, and so you could just, you've got these so you can look through these at your leisure to sort of figure out, are there areas that are value. Again, I've given you the summary sheet that we're going to come back to when I say that you have them, but I just want to know how I got to this sheet, and this sheet is what you have. And so it's a little messy, but it's meant to summarize and show in one place just that raw data of your rankings over here on the left, the department head rankings here in the middle, and then the large staff meeting participants here on the right. And you should have 2 pages of those, and make sure I at least have 2 screens. So I think I've given you 2 pages. If not, I can correct that. I might have skipped one for you, but I mean for you to have that so you can sort of see where folks are together and where maybe they're not so much. And so for me, with the Consolidated Government Center, we have a pretty good grouping that all groups put a lot of dots on those projects. And so for me, that is one that at least has strong support. Whether there's money to support it is a different question, but at least from a standpoint of where you and our department heads and our staff in general felt were important, really that Consolidated Government Center, the Grove Park is one we have talked about, has strong support. So I think that is interesting to see that as well. And you can sort of make your own determination. What I did find interesting, the marina, while a pretty popular project, had about as many let's don't do any more as we do more. And you had at least some in our large staff meeting group that said, maybe it's time not to do more on this project. So I just share that for awareness. It's one of those that had multiple parts within that project, as many of these. And if we'd broken them out and said, what about parking? You might have had a better ranking on just parking as opposed to all the marina improvements that totaled up to $16 million. Had some commenting on the Upper County splash pads. And again, I'll leave you some time, and I do owe you one more sheet that I'll print out. That's the second page of this, or the first page. I've given you one or the other, but to let you sort of see where others thought the importance were. But I just found the exercise interesting. This was the second sheet, again, showing the General Services Administration building, strong support for that all the way across. Stormwater had good support, at least from the board, and our warehousing project had a lot of support. And surprisingly for me, along with our large staff meeting participants, there was a lot more support for the warehousing project than I expected. So that's certainly of importance to them as well. As you come down through that, the Fire Station 3 replacement had a lot of support throughout, as well as some support for public safety and the firing station range. Again, I think you have a lot of dots shown in there, and so I've tried to just look through and see where all that makes sense. Really had for me quite a bit of support. This really surprised me to have that much in the way of the participants for the police firing range expansion. I found that interesting. And again, as I moved down to the Grove Area Library, even with many supporting the library included in our our county administration building, there was a pretty strong support down at the bottom for the Grove Library from our large staff meeting participants, which again, just found that interesting to sort of see where people place value in terms of where we would spend our money. In terms of the staff side. And then in transportation, strong support there, open space match, good support there, and then really overwhelming support for the transit bus stop improvements. So Ms. Larson, I think you've hit a nerve with many in our community, including the board and our department heads and our large staff meeting participants. So not that this is scientific, but at least gives an idea of sort of where we are in terms of different groups within our organization, and ultimately trying to help support what you as the board want us to do. And so when we come back to projects, I start back, the top sheet you have seen before. That is what Ms. Holland presented at the retreat. It is just the capital project requests. Again, totaling really $4.4 million, $441 million over a 5-year period if they were all funded. And of course, in the budget process, we are only talking about funding FY26, but we do have a funding plan in place that when we present a proposed budget to you, we would believe we could fund the next 5 years, a year at a time, if the world moves forward as we think it will. So the bottom part of this, I hesitate to show you, and I've left it really in spreadsheet, not as pretty format on purpose. It is not a finished document. It is not a proposal to you. It is a first pass at putting together projects with what we believe will be available funding. And as you can look, we had, shows you at the bottom of the total requested and the total projects and what is not funded and or was not recommended for funding in this. And as you go across to the bottom, that might have been me. I was going to say I didn't do that, but maybe I did. As you go across to the bottom, there's almost $110 million that in this funding plan and this proposal would not be funded over the next 5 years. That could change from year to year as we have more or less dollars going forward, but at least starting out, those were projects, and I'll come back to what is funded there, that is a first draft we are starting with. And I can tell you this is not what I'm recommending to you, so as folks say, I can't believe county administrator did this or did that. I have not done it yet. I have just shared a raw draft, and normally we go through 3 or 4 iterations of this. So when you want to know how we get there, it is a starting point. We will add and take away from this before we put out the proposed budget. And so that's really what I wanted to bring to you. This is that same first draft. It's a little more information where you can see what was requested below. And then what was recommended, so you can see, do we fund it? And in that case, we did. In this case, it wasn't fully. And as you go down, you can see what years and where money came from. When I talk about differences from the retreat, the only thing difference to these numbers should be we fully funded the school CIP. We have talked about that. The county paying for the school funding requests in their CIP that are on school or property within the county. So that would be any schools in the county if they had a request. Where before we had split it 90-10, this is recommending fully funding it. The only place that would be different is on joint facilities such as the pre-K. We would recommend we pay that on an enrollment share. So that is the assumption made and some of the differences in the numbers you would see here. The other request, we had about $1.5 million to $2 million in the marina request that really was double spent, I think, and we have not reduced the overall funding for the marina. But if you look back at your sheets you had before, it would show 16.3 and now it shows 14.5. And then our general service building request increased by $13 million. And that is a later version of a number, and it shows up in FY27. And we can talk through that as we go through the budget process, either today or in weeks, or when you get the proposed budget of what that means. Again, these numbers that I've got in here doesn't mean that I am proposing that or recommending it today. It's just where it is as a first draft of our proposed CIP. And so I wanted to make those differences from what you had seen before.
So question for you.
Sure.
So Parks and Rec, you have taken down from, it requested 3.8, and then, maybe it's gonna be 2.4.
Correct.
Is that marine? How do we know what you've taken out?
Well, I will try to, that's my next slide, so that's a
Okay,
great question.
Sorry.
One thing you're supposed to, in here, it's supposed to show you what is included. So it's the funding for the Grove Park design, the War Hill Sports Complex Skate Park, and the baseball, softball complex, and it's probably design. Haven't got Ms. Holland looking at me to tell me that's design, but I think that's probably design of the baseball, softball complex. On the next sheet.
So, which I appreciate, if I could, I do want to speak to this though,
Okay.
if I could.
Sure.
And not to get into the nitty gritty, and I appreciate that we are going to be taking the skate park away, but I feel that I must speak. We have said for years we are going to have softball at War Hill. We have baseball. We do not have softball there. So I feel very, if there's I just think we have to fulfill at some point the commitment that we are going to have a softball complex there.
So when you look through this, I ought to tell you at least what's in there, at least a little bit. There is more detail. You do have sheets in the handout that I wasn't planning to present today, but they are at the back of this presentation that are 2 per page that would go back to each of these projects and show you. You've got to have a little more of a magnifying glass to read them, but in trying to reduce paper, let me pick the fire department, for instance. It shows, where did I lose public safety? Public safety, it's showing a Fire Station 3 replacement. Let me come back. And as you look at those numbers, those are going to be in here. So you'll be able to match those numbers with what is in the chart. There's not much else in public safety, and there were other requests, and those are some things I'd come back to. But let me come down and show you what is not funded, because I have a little better listing of that. So that $110 million we took out, these are the numbers at the moment that are not in there. And I will tell you, some of them I believe will go back into as I try to put together a proposed budget, we will put some of these back in there. But at this point, on Parks and Recreation, we didn't recommend funding the marina at this moment. Again, not to say that's the final, but just trying to make up that difference of how do we stay within the cash we have and the debt service we've talked about. Your Upper County Park splash pad, you can see the items listed there that at this cut aren't in there. And so that is significant kinds of dollars as you come through that. The baseball, softball complex has reduced funding. I have to come back to what that means, but it is there, but there is a reduction to that. The warehouse that was very popular among staff and the board and the department head at this point is not recommended for funding in this version. And anytime we put it in, it's either generating more money, borrowing more money, or taking something out. And so I'm not trying to generate necessarily more money, trying to live within the cash funding that we have in place and not trying to borrow a significant more either, although you have some capacity that sort of start pushing on that ability to pay that Davenport had shared with you during the retreat. So as we get into this, there's some reduced funding in the general fund, the administrative building. That was, I think, moving funding from a year to a year. And then not funded at the moment is anything with Fire Station 6. I believe we will have some of that back. This $3.5 million includes fire truck and ambulance and design. So it's about $1.6 million for design. I expect to try to get design back into the 5-year plan so that it is starting. If you feel differently, you can push me in a different direction, or you could take it out of the proposed budget. But it probably won't have $3.5 million because we could add the equipment to it at a later date. But I do think getting the design started of that is important, and at least having it in that 5-year plan. I think the firing range expansion is a fairly low cost item. Still $700,000, but relative to the other items, that is something that would help our officers. And I think that is something, at least in the short term, I'd like to have in the 5-year plan. And then we'll talk about the other pieces of that. It is just working through the library. When it shows not having the $40 million library, at this point, we do have the addition and a library as the addition to the government center. So when folks are saying, well, you're not funding the library, not true. Our recommendation is to have it as part of the government center at the moment. I think that will hold there. And then the Grove Library, although strong support for it from our staff, at this point, I don't have that programmed in there in the 5-year plan. Not to say it won't be in the proposed budget, but again, that's where we are today. So what questions, and I'm not really pushing the board for any definitive answers. If you have an absolute where you want to go as a board, that is fine. I'm happy to take that direction. My work to finalize this, to have a proposed budget out at the end of March, we need to finalize the budget in the coming weeks. It takes, once we have sort of got all the numbers in place, it takes a week or two to get all the pages and get the book and get things ready so that it is a document we can release. And so our time of fixing this is really the next couple of weeks. So if you have thoughts or comments, I'm happy to take them today. We're happy to take them in the next week or two. However you'd like to go forward with that. I wasn't trying to push you for a decision on anything today other than awareness and a follow-up from the retreat of where these projects were at the moment.
If I can lead off the discussion very briefly, a minute before I open it up to everybody. I appreciate this because what I think is important for us is, there's a huge ask and that there's constraints. And there's a process by which you get from the asks to the proposed budget. And what I wanted to see was a little bit more of the process of how they were going through this. And I think this is an excellent idea of seeing what you're going through and recognizing it's not a final document, that it's push and pull. Every time you pull one thing out, you can push something else in. And that the next couple of weeks, they're going to be engaged in this process of trying to fit all the pieces together to get the maximum benefit out of the dollars we have. I personally, I don't want to necessarily intrude too much in the staff process of getting through that. I think if there's general overall guidance like we've given already before, I think we've indicated we want to proceed with the government center, or if we want to proceed with certain things, and we may have to deal with timing on some of these issues as we go forward. But between now and the time the budget comes out, I think that for us to have the ability to see how we get from point A to point B makes it a lot easier for me when I get that document to say, okay, I understand this a little bit better, as opposed to trying to go back and reconstruct that in retrospect. So I'll open it up for comments or conversations.
Scott, you're going to send the other piece of paper.
I'm going to get it to you before you leave today. Yes,
okay.
Ma'am.
Can you go back to what is out of your first? You need some training on the button.
Mouse training,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So by taking out the marina improvements, what, that's everything that you had in there, the parking, additional slips, all of that?
Yes, ma'am, it is at this point. Again, I'm
Okay.
not saying this is final, but it is, anything I put back in there that needs more money, or I have to take something else out. And some of those increasing costs, some of those are cash funded, some of those are debt funded, but they both have an impact. And our cash funding is about $10 million a year on the projects and about another 20 to 25 million a year on the capital maintenance. So we are going to look a little deeper into capital maintenance and see, are there opportunities there for these one-time expenditures as well?
Yeah, I guess for me, I mean, there's nothing on here that isn't of importance but I, it, I don't like to see the firing range expansion taken out, the police classroom, shoot house, the fire station, the Grove Library. I mean, those are the ones that are tough to, anything having to do with public safety, and the library. Now, I see where the courthouse architecture and engineering also saw where it got red dots. What happens though if they say we've got to? I mean, what's our agreement with the city on that? If the library says we have to expand, I mean, sorry, the courthouse says we have to expand, what pushback do we have? Say we had red dots, we're not doing it?
I don't think we'd be as simple as a red dot that we're not doing. In our agreement with the city, and the city's been very good to honor, if we have additional costs to the courthouse, they paid their proportionate share. So there's a funding formula for that, and they've been good. We do have conversations, but they've been good to pay their share. So I think the city's been a good partner there. Where we get into is the users, and that's been true of our departments. As we have taken departments here, and we have 40 people 20 years ago, and maybe we have 50, and we put them in the same space, and we've taken offices that would fit one, now have 3 or 4. The courthouse is going through some of those same iterations. They went through the space needs study with us. It did identify a future need for space. And so from the courthouse, eventually, if we don't provide a space and they have people, they're going to have a place, whether we're leasing offices on a short-term basis. But the plan is we would build additional space at the courthouse sometime. This is the first year of it sort of trying to get into the CIP. It's driven probably by our general services department because we have that connection and staff person at the courthouse. We have Sheriff Hardin who is there and often giving feedback from what he hears within the courthouse. And so we do want to meet the need for what they have in all of their space, but it may be that it doesn't start in 2030, it starts in 2031. Because to your point, I think all of these projects, our departments believe are needed to serve the community. That's what they're hearing from residents and citizens. And some would argue you don't need this or you don't need that, maybe. But I think there are a good list of projects that are important to the community, but the timing may be 7 years out instead of 5.
No, I think that's important. I mean, I think all these projects are important and need to move forward, but also we got to look at our financial capability. We don't have the financial capability of moving all these forward today. So it's placing those out in later years. And of course, with that, there's a cost. But like everything, you can't do it all, and you know how to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So we'll just take one bite at a time as we move forward. And some of these projects, there's not one that's more important than any others. I mean, there's a lot of them in there I'd like to see move forward. But if we don't have the money, then it needs to sit and wait until we are able to do that. And you know, we've got to remember we've got to keep our bond rating up, because that saves us money in the long run when we're borrowing money. So it's, you know, just like everybody else in their homes right now, there's a lot of people out there that are sitting there going, well, I wish I could do this or wish I could buy that. And the funds aren't there. And, you know, you may have to wait a few years till you gather those funds up to do those projects. So I think it's a good process, and it's good that, you know, citizens can see that. And of course, they think we're able to do whatever we can and whenever we can, but you know, we're limited, same thing as our citizens are, by the amount of money we bring in. So I appreciate the process and being able to put it out there for the citizens to see and understand, you know, there's a lot out there, but we've got a limited amount of money. So we've got to watch what we do and how we do it. Thank you.
And I don't want any of you or our residents to think it's gloom and doom. It's not. This
No.
is sort of the normal process most years. This year, when I've talked to other managers across Hampton Roads, the CIP portion of their budgets are much harder this year because of the inflationary costs associated with those projects. And so, but we go through something similar to that in the operating budget and our CIP budget every year. So this is not a gloom and doom. It's just making choices based on the money we have. And as much as it frustrates me, our finance department is very good with conservative estimates. And I think that's where we want them to be. We don't want to fund these things or think we're doing them and then not have the money for operations or CIP in future years. And so I do commend them on having a good conservative estimate. I think these are real projects in the 5-year plan you could fund if the world holds the next 5 years as we believe it will, and if maybe revenues will come in a little higher and let us do more. That's always my hope as the administrators. They'll be better than they've forecasted, but I appreciate their forecasting both on the operating and CIP side.
And I think it's smart too, because, you know, it's not a gloom and doom. You look around the county and look what we have and how rich we are as far as all the things that is supplied by the county and all the things that we have. And these are extra things that, yeah, we would like to have them and they'd be great and better the community and allow our citizens to have a whole lot more. But, you know, there's a limit to everything. And we're just living within our means and trying to protect the budget that we have. Thank you.
That's right.
And I just want to add another note of reality to this, and that is that this is a 5-year CIP, and that CIP changes every year. And so, you know, in the building that I worked in, the college for 40 years, was very consistently rated as in the fifth year of the CIP every year for about 20 years. So these things do have a tendency to move around somewhat, and when there are opportunities, I guess we take it, and when there are challenges, we accept that and move forward. But I do agree that you know, we've heard a lot about the softball complex in particular, that's something that people have been expecting to see some relief on over time. So, but I understand that you're calling for a reduction in the amount that.
I was trying to come back to the full amount. The full amount was 14.5 plus 2 million, so 16.5. And so we have a reduction in there, and I have to come back to what that is. But we still have a plan for some of that to be there. And we'll, again, I don't want anybody to look at this presentation because we'll have it online to say, I can't believe he's recommending that. That is not a recommendation. It is a first draft of an iterative process we go through in developing the proposed budget. So, you know, schedule-wise, we will finalize numbers or hope to finalize numbers in the coming weeks with the proposed budget being out at the end of March. We have scheduled a community budget meeting April 1st in this room at 6:00 p.m. So we will have that. If that seems to have a large attendance, we would offer others because I want to make sure our residents are aware of what's going on. We've got our budget public hearing with you, I believe, April 8th. Does that date sound right? And then we would look to a budget adoption at your May 13th meeting would be our hope. And certainly more discussions with you once the proposed budget is out as well. And as I finalize the proposed CIP, we'll at least have an opportunity to share what it is with you, but I don't know if we'll have you back together ahead of the proposed budget and have conversation. We'll see how that plays out over the coming weeks.
I appreciate the fact that folks need to understand this is a working document. It's not a final. It's something that's going to be push and pull. And it's I don't want the board to be for us to be so intrusive in the process that we slow you guys down and make it more difficult for you. I hope we haven't done that, but this has been very helpful. And I think letting everybody, not only us, but everybody in the community know it is not an easy project. It is a very difficult project that we go through. And there are a lot of trade-offs. And so how we get from point A to point B is probably more important. And I look forward to seeing what you come back with on it. I think we've all individually weighed in on our preferences and stuff. I think it's a time for you to proceed with it. Although I figured you could have picked a more appropriate day than April 1st, right?
We talked about the day. It just happened to be good timing. So sorry about that.
I will tell you this though, that the next retreat, I'm going to bring an extra packet of red dots,
Yeah.
or green dots with me.
Okay. Next, we have board discussions. This is number 3, solid waste updates from Bob Dittman.
Only 4 slides, so. Good afternoon,
Hi.
Chairman Eisenhower, members of the board, Mr. Stevens. I'm Bob Dittman. I'm your solid waste director. I'm here today to provide you with a brief update on 3 items: the county trash consolidation, the proposed opt-in trash consolidation program in Grove, and the Grove Convenience Center, and then answer any questions you may have. So, as we all know, the county made a decision to move forward with solid waste consolidation at the April 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting. We cleared the first 3 hurdles of the public hearing, the notice to the haulers, and the resolution. So we've started that process to displacement. The only other item that the VA code has in it is that the county may take measures necessary to provide such service within 1 year after the public hearing. How to satisfy this step is not well defined, and I probably did not articulate that well under next action. So we have been working on an amended garbage and refuse ordinance to permit county managed collection program. We've met with other localities that are going through this process, and we've also discussed a regional approach with some neighboring localities, which should satisfy this requirement. So the steps we have to take over the next 4 years prior to actual displacement: we will need to amend the garbage and refuse ordinance to regulate the collection and transportation of refuse within the county. We will also need to make a final determination if it will be a county-owned system or a county-managed refuse collection system. We also need to determine if we do want to go with a regional approach to waste management. And then also determine what role, if any, the county transfer station and the convenience centers will play in consolidation. We will, after those decisions are made, we will develop the necessary RFPs to move forward with consolidation. On the county opt-in trash consolidation program in the Grove area, it was selected because that was an area that was designated as disadvantaged by the federal government. We also have high incidence of illegal dumping and litter in the area. So the goal was to see if the county could provide lower trash rates via a county negotiated collection system. Currently, collection rates in the Grove area are somewhere probably between $28.50 and $33.50 per month per house. The benefit to a refuse company to partnering with the county would be the single point of contact. This would eliminate bad debt expenses for the haulers since the county is the billed entity. We would also be able to, they would also have dependable invoice payments. There would be no need for them to have a collection agency. The increased service density should improve their route efficiency and increase their profitability. The program can then be expanded if the board deems it to be successful. Now, some of the hurdles we would have is that it would be an opt-in program. The county cannot require participation nor void existing contracts while we are within the 5-year time frame. Currently, 2 trash companies and HOAs and management entities service approximately 50% of the residents in the Grove area. So they almost have a monopoly down there right now. And the other issue we would have is we cannot mandate any savings are passed on to residents or tenants if the property is controlled or the contract is controlled by a management entity. So the guidance we would need today is whether or not this is something the board wants to pursue, because we would need to draft an ordinance that would permit a county-managed opt-in trash collection program. The ordinance would be similar to the recycling ordinance. It just gives the county the ability to manage and bill the residents. We would need to also then determine if the county wants to include mobile home parks as a service area. Because currently, mobile home parks, because they are zoned commercial, they are excluded from the opt-in recycling. So we would need to make that decision. Once those decisions are made, then we can work on the framework for an RFP and see what kind of pricing we would get back once we have that in place. Lastly would be the Grove Convenience Center. As I stated, Grove area has high incidence of illegal dumping. The closest convenience center is approximately 15 minutes away by car. Originally, we were looking at placing the convenience center on the left-hand portion of the map where the trees are. Unfortunately, the property is almost landlocked, which caused stormwater management issues. So now we moved the proposed location to where Fire Station 22 currently sits. So what we would need to do is prepare the building for demolition, disconnect the utilities, remove any salvageable equipment. We have a fuel pedestal there that we need to move, and then we are in the process of securing an easement from Dominion to actually access or egress from the property via their current, it's not even an easement, it's actually their property that comes out onto Pocahontas Trail. The current design would improve the fire truck access to the fuel island because it would allow them to drive through to the fuel island. Currently, they enter the fire station and have to back up to the fuel island. We're going to utilize as much of the existing paved and concrete surfaces as well as the floor as FS22 to minimize any additional impermeable surfaces. We would provide separate entrance and exit to the convenience center. It would be, the entire facility would be gated and fenced with screening facing Pocahontas Trail as well as the fire hall. We would have closed circuit cameras installed as we have at all the other three convenience centers. And then we would improve the entrance area, that apron through the Dominion property to facilitate entering and exiting the convenience center. The convenience center will be similar to the one at Tuning Road as far as services, recyclables, paper, cardboard, a cardboard baler, metal plastics. We would accept trash there. We would install a trash compactor like we are in the process. We have one at Toano. We are installing one at Tuning Road, and then we don't have a need for one currently at Jolly Pond. Then we would also accept the household hazardous or household chemical waste such as waste oils, cooking oils, antifreeze, lead oil, or lead acid batteries, and propane tanks. So the current timeline, I will be back here in March for the Planning Commission meeting. The special use permit is on the agenda. Pending that approval, then I will be back here again for the board to approve the special use permit, and then we can move on to the master plan, which I am hoping that we can get that approved sometime by the end of August, which then we can do the bid documents with construction, hopefully by the end of this year, early 2026. And currently we have about a little over 600,000 still in the funding for the Grove Convenience Center. I went through that kind of quick, but are there any questions?
Hey,
as I can take my
questions.
I've got a few. So it looks like we're doing two different projects in Grove.
Yes.
And so why are we doing two different ones? If we're doing the convenience center,
right,
where the old dumping that's been out there in Grove forever is gonna stay out there, and that's more of Mike and his group's thing to kind of, in my mind, to take care of. So we've got a convenience center, but then we're gonna do trash pickup. Isn't that fighting ourselves with going, okay, we've got the convenience center here, because, you know, everybody from Grove was having a ride so far. So we said, let's put the convenience center there so that they can get to something. They're not having to travel so far to get, you know, to take their trash.
Right.
But then we're going to do collection too.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I don't understand why we're doing two.
Currently, probably about 90% of the residents in Grove have curbside.
Right.
So the trash and the litter issue it's still an issue out there, even though there is curbside. What we're hoping to do is if we can make it enticing enough for a private vendor to partner with the county that we can lower their trash rates so that we can maybe curtail some of the litter and illegal dumping. The convenience center will be there because it will be there for the recyclables, it'll be there for the curbside. Yes, there will be still some trash, but we're gonna just have the trash compactor there. It's gonna be more for bulk and recycling pickup and drop off.
What happens to our residents that are already haulers of the trash down there?
They would be able to bid on. I mean, we would send the bid, the proposal, the RFP, if we went through that process. It would go to all 5 haulers that are down there.
Okay, and then usually when the government gets involved in something, the cost never goes down. It always goes up, and not saying anything bad about anything. It's just a common fact. And so, you know, your insurance would go up and everything else. So the insurance that some of the private haulers have now, they would probably end up having to get more insurance. So the cost may go up because, you know, everything that gets put out by the government or a larger entity says, okay, if you're going to haul for us or you're going to haul privately, you need this insurance, this insurance, this insurance, where they may not have as much hauling separately. So there's an increased cost there where we're trying to save money. And I just know how these things work.
Right.
And it's always a cost.
Right, that's probably the one variable is what the county would require as far as insurance coverage, minimum insurance coverage versus what they have now, because we have no mechanism to know that information. That's not a requirement that they submit that information to us. But as a rule, if you can increase density, if you have a hauler that say currently has 50 houses down there and they go up to 150 down there, it's going to be less expensive for them to pick it up.
Right.
So the cost should go down. What their insurance cost is now versus what the county would require, I can't answer that.
Right. And it should go down, but as everything else is increasing, more than likely it's not going to go down. And so I'm just wondering, since we're looking at bringing this in and we got the 5-year window, why are we now wanting to put this program in place before we do the look at if we do a full program or not?
It's almost like dipping our toe in the water. We're going to see what kind of responses we would get from the waste haulers as far as pricing. If we can save the residents money, great. It gives us a good idea as to what we're going to see whenever the county goes towards full consolidation. But if it is successful in Grove, we can expand it. If the board chooses, we can expand it and actually get, if we're able to save the residents money before the 5 years are up, that's really what the intent is to try and find out if we can do it early.
And I know that, you know, something to think about. I've had several people reach out to me recently, and they're elderly people, and they go, we've had our hauler for 30 years, and we don't take our trash down to the end of the driveway like most of the bigger haulers. If it's not out on the curb, they're not picking it up. And so there's a lot of citizens worried about, okay, my hauler picks it up and takes it out there. And I know some of the other haulers, you can pay a little bit more and they'll stop the truck and they'll take it from wherever you keep it out there. So, you know, we can't fix it all.
No,
But
that's how we would, those items we would include in the RFP. So we would ask, you know, generally what happens is there's a percentage that you can say 10% of the residents can get backdoor service or you know, garage front service to where they would get. So there's and that's generally how it's done. And then the rest of them, yes. And I know that, I believe it's with your county, you almost have, you put an application in and you explain why which is what we do with recycling, with curbside recycling. We have what's called back porch service or front porch service, which the residents are elderly, they can move the recycling cart to the curb. And they are listed on the sheet for that route, so the drivers know which ones they have to go to the house and get it. But there is a limit on the number that you would do that for.
And that's what I was trying to get to, so that the citizens out there watching today
Yes.
know that what they're getting now, what we're trying to do is keep what they're getting now and keep those benefits, but try to drive the price down
Yes.
by using a volume and not have multiple companies, but maybe one, and drive that cost down. And that's where a lot of citizens, I think, are confused.
Right.
Because they're like, well, I've got the one that comes up, and I know Jimmy, he picks it up and he takes it down there and I don't have to worry about it. He puts it back where exactly where I want it. And so they're scared that they're gonna end up with a company that comes in and says, if it's not on the curb, bye-bye,
Right.
good luck, I'm not gonna do it. So, it's just a matter of if we can tailor some of those things for the citizens that can't make that walk and
Right.
can't get out there, that, kind of help along.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Hill, if I could add a little bit, I think Mr. Dittman has answered the question pretty well. I've struggled a long time with the Grove Convenience Center if we were going to get into the garbage business. Mr. Dittman said he thought there'd be value in those centers. They may look different, but maybe they become just recycling centers in the future. But some of the Grove development, when you ask about why we're doing both at the same time, for me, it makes sense to do it if there's use of that site in the future. And when he had came on board and said that he thought there was use, that put us back in motion of proceeding with it. So we're a few years behind, some of that because of me, but I do think it makes sense. The other reason I think doing the Grove Convenience Center now makes sense is Fire Station 22, I don't know when it was built, but it does not represent James City County. If you look, it is the old fire station. It is merely a storage site, and the chief uses it interior for some training activities that we're moving elsewhere. But it is not a good-looking building. It's on a main thoroughfare. It's very visible, and I think there's value to removing that building. Minus the loss of storage, I think there's cleaning it up so that site looks better. And doing this, convenience center or not, will clean up the site so that it functions better and looks better. If this site was not needed for a convenience center in the future for whatever reason, and I think there will be use, I think we'll have some reuse of our existing convenience centers when we fully get into the business, if that's where we end up, and I believe that's where we're headed. If there's not a use on the solid waste side, there certainly would be in the fire side. So for me, it's not money wasted. It's not money we're throwing away. The stormwater issue drove us back to this side because that made it much more plausible, and it didn't add hundreds of thousands of dollars in stormwater costs. And I think we'll have a site that really services the community as good or better and looks better. So that's one on the convenience center. On the garbage piece, getting into it this way, to Mr. Dittman's point, if we're okay with starting in Grove and providing that service as a contracted service in Grove, and we could do it ourselves with our trucks. We have come in just conversations with you to we ought to be contracting it out. So we contract it out. It is likely we're going to get one of the existing providers. It's not going to be a company we don't know. It's going to be one of these 5 or 6 that currently service. So they're already servicing some houses. The values of us getting in it isn't to displace people, at least not initially. We're 4 years away from that displacement, but we get a foothold in a neighborhood. We get people that are billed by the county, have communication with the county, but it may be, and I expect it to be, one of these contractors still comes and services them. So I think it's a way for us to get in it, as Mr. Dittman sort of tiptoe into it, but to get into it so in 5 years or 4 years from now, when we become the provider, we're there, right? And we could, to me, we would expand that across the county, this being the first step. And maybe we expand every 6 months, every 12 months, and we rebid. So maybe we have 3 bidders, and we have 3 of these existing contractors that become competitive. That's my hope. The other hope is we get a good price initially, because we would try to write the RFP so that over time, as they gather customers, their base would increase. But at year 4, they would likely be the provider for the county in that area, at least until we rebid the contract, right? So the idea that I'm going to service all of these households in the future ought to be an incentive for a bidder to give us a good price in the beginning. We'll have to evaluate that as we go forward. And then certainly every program I've been in has an exemptions list. It's not really age. I will tell you, my 86-year-old mother is offended when somebody says you ought to let the city come and get your garbage cans, because she wants to push it out because she can. But there are medical exemptions at any age where people aren't able to. So certainly I would expect we will provide that service, that if you can't bring your cart to the street, we will get it. And there wouldn't be an additional cost. That would be in our base. I think we could talk about, do we add an extra cost for that same exemption? You don't qualify, but you want to pay another $10 a month for us to come get it. I think we could offer that if we choose to, but we certainly would do it for those that can't move it out. We would offer that service. For those that just don't want to, we probably would offer a way for them to pay. The other huge advantage for me, I think, will be more cost effective because of volume. Right now, we've got 5 providers serving the county. We get it down to 1 provider, us. I think you will be more efficient in the route. So while government's not always cheaper, I think in this case, because we have those economies of scale and we are the provider in year 5, I think you will see a better cost for our community. And I didn't understand the garbage world. It seems to be like the cable world, and that all of us pay a different price. And maybe that's a new model for them. But I know I have fielded a lot of those complaints and calls. With the county, you'll have a price, and it'll be the same price wherever you are based on our contract. So it may be regionally different depending on the contract, or we may equalize them to be fair to our residents. But I think it'll be a much easier price structure to understand for our residents. And I do think in most cases, we will be cheaper. The bigger advantage for me, as we went through that study 4 or 5 years ago now with, I think, GBB, was right now trucks are driving like 6,000 miles a week. This will reduce it to just over 2,000 miles a week if we're the provider. And for me, I think a significant portion of the litter on our highways is coming from those trucks. I mean, I followed them. I see it coming out. You call them. They're very apologetic. They'll go pick it up. But I wonder about all the times I didn't see them. And so I think beyond just cost, beyond the customer service piece, because our residents often are frustrated. I know General Services gets a lot of calls when things are bad in the garbage world that they can't answer because we're not the provider. I think they will help when we're that provider, but the littering piece of it, I think, is a real benefit to us getting into it too. So I do think making the 2 projects go together makes sense to me. It took me a while to get there, but I do think it's a good use of our dollars and makes sense to move them both forward.
And if I could add 2 points, that with the convenience, with curbside trash collection, there are still going to be items that don't fit in the cart. The convenience center would be a location that they could take the bulk items to, that don't fit in the cart. Otherwise, and a lot of times, those are the items we are picking up on the side of the road.
And two things. I'm not against it at all. And I'm when I ask questions, I try to be the person sitting on the couch at home and go, what in the heck are they talking about? Why are they doing this? What are they, and try to get those questions out here in the public and get answered so that the person sitting at home goes, okay, now I understand it. I see what they're doing, and try to fill those gaps. So, I appreciate everything you're doing and what you've brought to us today. And then Station 2 was a temporary station when it was built. That's why it looks like it looks, because it was a quick put it up, metal building, and we're gonna build this temporary station, and then we're gonna build the real station. And you can see how long it took us to get a real station. So sometimes, like John was saying, that CIP item moves out. Well, we're doing okay with it. Let's kick it on down. And it's money. It's all about money. Thank you.
And be happy this is in Fairfax County because they have 24 separate haulers to deal with, and they are starting the waste consolidation process.
So I would say station, just like the General Services building, it was a temporary building. That's still there. So if anyone's been to Tuning Road, it is extremely busy.
Yes.
I mean, every day. I had to go last week because my garbage didn't get picked up because of the snowstorm, and we were 4 deep. But as Grace knows, you've got the nicest people working there.
We do have very good employees.
And same for Jolly Pond. I've yet to encounter a grumpy person working at one of our convenience centers, and that means a lot because you're dealing with trash.
Yes.
And, you have a good attitude about it, and I just appreciate that so much. So, the one thing that does concern me a little bit is that you said the 5 providers, you would go out and get, they would be able to bid. But then I go back to the garbage question, because there are some providers that are better than others about covering the back of their trucks and ensuring that we don't have trash. So I would hope that would be part of the RFP. You have to maintain maintenance on your garbage truck so that you don't have garbage coming out if you're going to be doing that pilot program.
Right, and I believe there are some standards in the garbage and refuse ordinance about just transporting waste. We can take a look at it and make sure that if we need to beef them up, we can. And the other thing that we can do is any agreement that comes out of the RFP, we can write that in there as a condition of the contract, as far as the loads have to be contained and the penalty provisions if they're not. So if they're in the contract, as I've learned, if they're in the contract, they're a lot easier to enforce than just an ordinance, because an ordinance can be appealed.
Okay. And I think we talked about this initially. We talked about maybe starting to provide some pockets. And then, I am a longtime user of one garbage company here. And, my bill's $38 a month. I mean, it went from $33 to $38, and there's no negotiating. I mean, I've tried. And so, heck, if the county was even $5 cheaper than that, I'm saving, I mean, I frankly, I'm almost a senior citizen, so probably am, I think, but anyway, I mean.
We'll let you know when you're there.
Thank you. It's just very concerning, and it's harder and harder to get somebody on the phone because these
Call
companies
centers.
are not correct. So, I think there's so much good that would come out of us doing it. As I've stated before, some of the biggest calls and concerns we get are after storms, which that would be a different thing if we were doing it. So I just think there's a lot of pluses to it. My son told me about a program in some localities where water meters are going to smart meters, and I know this would have to be a partnership between James City and JCSA, but not just going to the smart, but with the radio antenna, which Doug has talked about a little bit, where there's a transmitter on the trash trucks. If the trash trucks are the localities providing that, so you've kind of killed two birds with one stone, because they're picking up the information for the billing, which keeps other vehicles from having to be on the road doing that. So something we just might want to think about as we move forward. So, thank you.
And I may want to make sure I leave here with clear direction. We want to continue to pursue the opt-in program and grow. And do we want to, at least when we write the ordinance for that, include mobile homes?
So,
Is that a vote we would take, or?
That's approximately 50% of the residents down there in Grove.
We would bring it, for the vote, it would be for the ordinance, so we would have to have an ordinance. So I don't
Right.
need a vote today. Really an indication, and if you can think about that a day or two. I hadn't really thought of the mobile home question. I'm inclined to try to figure that out, but
Yes.
it may be an
Please.
area. Do we require them as we go forward? Initially it's an opt-in program. It's pretty easy to include them if we want to include them in something that is optional. It may be more of a conversation as we get into when we get into the 5-year window and we're four more years and we make it mandatory. Are we going to impose that on a mobile home park, or are we going to require them to handle it internally where they get a commercial service, which may be less cost to their residents that way? So
I have a question. So the mobile home parks, do they not use big dumpsters?
No. There's
No.
only, I think
Okay.
only one down in Grove uses a dumpster. The rest of them do have individual carts.
They can't participate in recycling.
In recycling, correct, because because of how the property itself is zoned.
I'd like to just say I'm in favor of this, but I'm not in favor of the county buying trash trucks and doing it themselves. I think instead of putting all these people out of business, we try to get them to conform and work with us.
So I think
Just my opinion, and we've talked about it before.
Yeah, and I think our sense has been that we ought to put it out for bid and contract for the garbage pickup. The area that I might come back to you and want to talk about us owning trucks is a few more of the knuckle boom trucks. That way we could do bulk pickup. And that way, when we have a storm kind of event, I've got staff and equipment that we can do the storm pickup. So so when we talk about trucks, I'm talking about a half dozen or less trucks. The actual garbage collection week after week, I think ought to be a contractor. I think that's our best way into it. The other piece will be the exemptions, because the one-armed trucks are very efficient. They're not what you go and do the medical exemptions where people need it rolled out. That needs to be probably a two-man crew, probably a smaller truck. Maybe they own that. Maybe we do that. We might want to feel that out through the RFP to see what makes sense. But I'm with you. I think by and large, contracting it out, one, it keeps these providers, one of them will be our low bidder. So we don't displace that provider. They're just here doing business, and we pay them, and the customers pay us. So I think that's logical throughout the county to have them as doing the bulk of the work.
We could also have trucks like you're talking about, just do big item pickups or those kind of things where people pay $25 and you come.
I'm not even, I think what we were
don't even
proposing is
think
your
that?
garbage fee, and we still have some time with you to work through what you'd like to see. I'd like to be, if you're paying whatever per month for garbage services and you have to pay it, I mean, we've talked about a mandatory program, particularly within the PSA, where you don't have a choice. What Bob's talked about initially is opt-in. It is a choice. But when that 5-year window clicks off, which is 4 years away, you have to have garbage service if you have water. And we would be your provider at that point if we go the direction we're headed. At that point, whatever that fee is ought to include bulk pickup, whether it's 4 times a year, whether it's on call, but I think you'd include it. Now, you could get more if you had a larger load or you needed additional service, but maybe it comes with 4 pickups a year, whether they're limbs or appliances or mattresses, I don't know. But that's where I think we probably have staff that could be responsive to that. And that way I'd have that staff and that equipment during a storm where we can then direct people. I don't have to worry about a contractor who might be overwhelmed somewhere else,
Sure.
not getting here to service the community.
Okay, sounds good.
And I want to thank you, Mr. Dittman, for the wealth of information you provided here today and for working through this issue. I think it was almost 20 years ago that I first asked the board to consider doing this. And I know that this
Wasn't it worth hanging around?
It certainly was. If we get this done.
Yeah, true.
But it's also the case that when we have been talking about the Grove Convenience Center, it's kind of been in and out of the CIP over the years, and so it's great to see it moving ahead here as well. I can't tell you, well, Mr. Stevens knows absolutely, the number of emails we get from residents from Grove who are keeping their eyes out for the kind of dumping that is rampant, and they are just doing their best to try to make the community better. Mr. Radcliffe, who's on our Clean County Committee Commission, is a resident of Grove, and he knows, just as the rest of us do, that there's a real challenge. It'll be a great help, and the fact that it is an area that has been federally recognized as being a lower income neighborhood that needs some additional attention, I think is critically important. And finally, the thing that we can point to is we do know that some of our neighbors are doing this already. And in those instances, boy, I would love to pay what they're paying for their garbage collection. So I'm full speed ahead and include mobile homes and see what we can do.
Can I just make one follow-up comment for people that I think people are probably driving down to Grove, and dumping because it's at the end. That's just my guess. Our convenience centers are incredibly price point nice, or whatever the word would be. I mean, there's no excuse to go through your change.
Right.
And go and pay to dump your things at our convenience center, because I have a feeling if someone came that was in a financial restraint, if they are, they can call me from Jolly Pond, and I'll give them my credit card to pay for somebody rather than to dump, because really we have very reasonable prices at our convenience centers, and that's where you need to go and dump your garbage. Don't do that to a neighborhood. There's just absolutely zero excuse for that.
I think a lot of it along Pocahontas Trail is unsecured loads, that a bag blows off the back and gets hit by about 4 or 5 cars, and then it's spread over 2 or 3 blocks. I mean, it's not a large quantity, it's just over a large area. There are occasions where a dump truck backs up and dumps a load of stuff off of Whiting Road. So,
Shame.
yes. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Dittman. Government Center update, Mr. Breinheimer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm here for my monthly Government Center update.
How often?
We've been doing now since beginning of this year, or last year, so it's been a little over a year we've been doing these. Don't have a lot to say, just mention a few things that are going on with the Government Center. Mr. Stevens has signed off on that second interim agreement, so we're moving forward with that. We actually have a kickoff meeting next week with the builder group to kind of start that new process. HGJV is also working on the addendum for the programming and schematic design for the library, being as the potential addition on the site. So you'll be seeing that at some point here in the next few months to sign off on that. Meeting with them regularly now, Paul Holt and I both, mostly Paul, about the traffic impact analysis with the library being the projected addition. That does create some traffic number concerns overall for the project. Just the higher number that gets used for a library versus just general office space. So I think there will be some other traffic requirements that will probably need to be met moving forward. And we're working through some of that right now, but still moving forward. Don't expect any major changes to the site plan with the potential library being the addition. Maybe some minor adjustments with the parking and how the entrance of that might sit on the site, but nothing major there. And then just today, I sent an email to all department heads. We're forming a bunch of different little working groups for county employees, different areas of the building, whether it be outside space, cafe space, lobby space, things like that, so employees can provide input and help give some guidance on things they'd like to see in there too. So we'll start holding those meetings here in the next few months. But otherwise, things are moving forward and going very well. I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has on the Government Center.
I've got one question.
Yes, sir.
Will these monthly updates continue?
Yes, sir. I will
'Cause there's-
continue these monthly updates until you tell me not to do them.
Good, because there were some comments at our last meeting that these weren't going on, and I just want to make sure they continue and
Yes, sir.
and keep us updated.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
You,
For the
Brad.
questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We now move to board considerations, and our first one is appeal of notice of violation in 110 Rivers Bluff, and the property owner's attorney has an issue and not be able to attend today, and they are requesting a deferral to March 25th business meeting. Trying to grant that. Do we need a motion to do that?
Well, I mean, if we've read over the material and staff is suggesting that we do not grant an appeal, I mean, is it just,
Well, I had this discussion with staff earlier when I read through the agenda, and the agenda has some detailed information from representing the county's position on this, and it is an appeal of the county's position, and what we do not have is we do not have adequate, in my mind, adequate information, because I've asked the question, on what basis is the appeal being made, what are the details, whatever, we don't have that information. And so I would think it would be in in the best interest of the due process to allow them to have a chance to come before us before we render any kind of decision. I look for a motion.
I'll move the motion.
Okay, move for deferral to March 25th.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Ms. Larson? Aye. Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we now move to contract award, $1,368,000 James City County Recreation Center Gymnasium envelope repair project. Mark Abbott.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Stevens. I'm here today requesting approval of a resolution for the repair of the gymnasium envelope at the James City County Recreation Center in the amount of $1,368,000. The Recreation Center gym requires extensive repairs and enhancements to ensure its long-term durability, energy efficiency, and visual appeal. A study performed by a professional engineering firm using thermal imaging and water testing observed that water staining, efflorescence, and active water leaks in the gymnasium area of the facility attributed to 4 primary issues, all ultimately allowing rainwater to infiltrate the building. These issues include failed and open joints in the exterior panels, which compromise a building's exterior seal, missing end dams at the storefronts, windows, which fail to properly direct water away from the structure. Fabrication issues with the downspouts, which prevent efficient water draining from the roof, and failed foundation waterproofing, which allows water to seep through the foundation into the interior. Each of these factors contributes to the water intrusion, and addressing them will be critical to resolving the ongoing moisture-related concerns in the gymnasium. This project will focus on addressing critical water intrusion issues and envelope leaks with the gym's roofing, foundation, windows, and exterior installation, ensuring the facility remains a safe, energy efficient, and an attractive community space. All work will be performed in compliance with design drawings, focusing on quality and sustainability. Thank you for your attention and support. We are excited to move forward with these necessary improvements to benefit the community. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
How long do you think, when they do this, like the roof and all that, how long is the rec center going to be closed? Do you know?
Rec Center will not close at all. There may be a few interruptions with the window replacements as far as the track up top of the gym. Other than that, it will remain open with some minor
Disturbances, yeah,
distributing of the parking lot.
sure.
Can I just ask a question about, has any of this resulted in any mold?
No mold. The major issue is there are the paint on the interior of the facility, the CMU walls is peeling in several locations. There have been some floor buckling towards the edges that have been addressed, throughout the years, but that should and will take care of any of those issues moving forward.
Nope, but no issues with mold.
No, sir.
Great, thank you.
Questions? Any further questions for staff?
I'll move the approval of the resolution.
Stevens, we have a motion. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. And our third one is Regional Board Representative to the Hampton Roads Workforce Council. And essentially, this was where we had appointed at our organizational meeting, Ms. Knoll was going to have that, and has subsequently found that she has a conflict between the Peninsula Regional Jail and Workforce Council. And I'm available and able to step back into that role, but since we adopted the package to begin with, we need to formally redesignate me as the proper person for that. So
Move to appoint Mr. Eisenhower to serve as our representative to the regional, to the Hampton Roads Workforce Council.
Stevens?
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, board requests and directives.
All right, I'll lead us off. I'm gonna go back a few years and talk about some fun things in James City County. So it wasn't very long ago. It seems like longer than it has been, but it wasn't long ago that we had the county fair. And the county fair started as a tomato judging contest at the 4-H Center. And then it moved from there to the North School. And CMP happened to be one of the sponsors for it. And my dad worked at CMP, so of course he tells all the boys that y'all are coming up to work on the fair in James City County. So we got involved with the county fair, and that was back kind of a few years back. And then it moved to the Upper County Park, and when it moved up there, I had a chance to start the donate for the fireworks, and we had fireworks up there at the end of the fair, and that worked out very well. And then the fair moved to the Chickahominy Riverfront Park, and then eventually it kind of went by the wayside, like a lot of things do. I guess it served its time. And during that time, also I joined the Volunteer Rescue Squad in 1984, and I ran also with the Volunteer Fire Department in '84, but became a member in February of '85. So I was real happy to get in the fire department, excited with the fire department, and ran a many a call, good and bad, but I was able to help the citizens of James City County. I've been with the Kiwanis Club and enjoyed the Kiwanis Club and all for 20 plus years now, and was one of the founders of the Tawano Kiwanis Club as well, and won't be shortly, I'll have 20 years in that as well. Was also a member of the Ruetan Club and years ago, and enjoyed my time with the Ruetans, and then had the privilege to help James City County preserve the Norge train station, which took 17 years to get it to from the point of where it sat to eventually moving it to the new location. And then I was able to move along and join the Board of Supervisors in 2013. And I've been so lucky to be not only a member of this group, but also HR TAC, PDC, Harumfa, TPO, and all the other things that other positions that the board has. So that being said, that's, you know, it's amazing how 40 years of service to the community, it's a little bit better than 40 years, goes by so quick. You turn your head, and you know, I thought about it the other day, and I was thinking if every citizen could give 5 or 10 or 20 years, not 40, but of several years in their community, how much better our community would be in anything they want to volunteer in. It could be picking up trash, it could be working at the library, and just kind of volunteering for our community. That's what makes our community strong and you know, and gives it what it is. And like I say, I've been so privileged to be on the board, and that's been one of my biggest accomplishments, other than the fire department and running with all the men and women involved in there. I've thought about this hard and all that, and I'm to the point in my life where I'm going to spend more time with my wife and children, and they support my decision and all that. So I just want to let y'all know now, while it's enough time for others to run, that I will not seek re-election. And once this term is finished in December, then there's other things that I'd like to do in James City County and donate my time and effort and all that. And I've had a great run here in the county, but you know, I just want to do some other things. You know, and you come to a point, just like with the fire department, when I stepped away from the fire department, you come to a point where you go, okay, it's time for another person to come in and grab it and take it forward and move it forward. And so I just, you know, I've done a lot of thinking about this, and you know, the biggest pullback is I want to see the county complex finished. I've worked on that since day one. And General Services Building, I want to see that taken care of. There's a lot of things that I want to see completed, and that's why. But I know with this board, it'll get completed. You know, no doubt in my mind, it'll get completed. And maybe we can get the instead of just the HIP, we can get the LE on it now. John, that's a joke that John and I had last week. And I just want to, you know, open it up for whoever may want to run for this year coming up. And I want to give them enough time to get in there and do their run. But I have had such a privilege working with all the staff and citizens. You don't understand, you know, a lot of y'all know the staff and get to know the staff. But when you're doing this job, you get to interact with staff. You get to see who they are. And I've said it before, I'll put them up against any group in the United States as far as our staff and their ability to do their job. And they'll work with you hand in hand. If you come in and you've made a mistake on something and you come to our staff and say, I did this and did that, and I know I'm going to get a fine or maybe this, or they're like, come on in, let's figure it out, let's get through it, and they'll work with you. And you can't get that anywhere else. You can't get that because they're connected here. They're staff, but there's a lot of volunteer time that our staff does behind the scenes that you don't see. And that's what I'm talking about. If we can get the rest of the citizens, and I know life is busy, it's hard to do everything, but if you can get the rest of the citizens out there to be part of the community and join the community and volunteer. There's a prime example right there, the many years of volunteering. I mean, talking trash for us and how many years she has volunteered selfishly because she doesn't like to see a dirty community. So that's all I have. I know I talk sometimes a little more than I should, but that's all I have right now. And, but I will be seeing my term, and you will not get a minute of rest or peace while I'm sitting up here on the seat. So thank you.
Thank
I'm
you for that
shocked.
reassurance.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. We're going to miss you.
Thank you.
So I don't have anything really exciting. However, I did go a week ago Sunday to Frothy Moon Brewery, where the local library people came and they opened up the Imagine Library, which is a program that Dolly Parton has been doing for years. And what that does is you register your children, and children from ages 1 to 5, when they register with that program, get a free book every single month. And it was a great turnout, and there's a local group here who runs it, and I have their information, that just to get kids reading. Reading, as we know, is really bad most places, and I think anything we can do to get our kids to read is great. And Miss Parton has done this for years, and these books are free. They're so cute, and they gave away probably 60, 70, the little train that could. So I enjoyed that. That was fun. Thank you.
One thing I want to mention is that I am going to be participating. I participated last year, as you know, I got a pie in my face for Alzheimer's, but I'm participating again this year. I'm hoping to get some people from James City County to participate in the walk and be interested in, even if it's just raising the walk registration. 1 in 3 seniors is impacted with Alzheimer's, which is a staggering statistic to me, I believe. And so I am grateful. Heather Harmon, who I think was so instrumental last year in getting so many people involved. As you know, Heather's with Henderson. She is leading the effort this year and asked me to participate, and I'm honored to participate. And so you'll probably be hearing a little bit about that over the next month or so. We're also having a kickoff breakfast. Many of you will receive an invitation, so I hope that you'll attend. I'll be leaving late Friday, early Saturday for the National Association of Counties Legislative Conference in DC, which should be very interesting given all that is going on up there. And I remain concerned about the federal government is a huge employer for the Commonwealth of Virginia and for the Hampton Roads area. So I'm hoping we're keeping our eye out on that and what is happening there. And on Friday, Supervisor McGlennon and I will have the school liaison committee meeting where I'm sure we'll hear an update on the budget. And I gotta say, Mr. Hipple, you've blown me away. I thought he's gonna make his reelection announcement right here.
That's what I thought.
I was not thinking it was gonna make that turn. And you're a lifelong James City County guy, and you have served your community well. So I appreciate and respect your decision. That's a hard one to make. So, but thank you.
It's a ways off right now, but let me just mention that there's going to be a community meeting sponsored by VDOT in late March on March 26th at James River Elementary School to look at the Pocahontas Trail improvements. So it's good to see that VDOT is beginning to move on that project. It's, again, one of those things that's taken a long time, but it's moving along now, so that's great. And I'll just echo what Ms. Larson said. Mr. Hipple, I know that was a tough decision to make, and certainly it's the case that I like to think we've had very good relationship among our board members over the last several years. and you've been a big part of that, because we can all disagree or agree on issues, but as long as we keep it civil and still respect each other's point of view, I think that's great, great opportunity, and this has been a board that's been able to do that in so many different ways, and thank you very much for that work.
Now, I'll start out with my thanks to you for your service to the community, sir. I know I agree that it's a difficult decision to make, and a lot of things go into it, and a lot of them are very personal, but thank you for sharing that with us. This last couple of weeks, I had February 12th, a Black History Celebration ceremony that the county puts on. Was, again, really a phenomenal event, especially the food. And John was there with me for that. I think you were there for a short time, too, weren't you, Michael?
I was there the whole
Yeah,
time.
I thought you were, too. I think you got there in time for the food.
No, I got there early.
Okay.
Stood in the back.
He was visited.
Yeah, on the 13th February, I had attended a large staff meeting, which I try to do periodically. It's if you haven't been to one, it's worthwhile to go take a look, because you get a pretty good cross section of the folks in the community and in our little James City County employee community. And it was nice to go around the room and hear people talk about who they were and how long they had been here and everything. It sort of reaffirms for you what our staff is all about and the service they provide to our constituents. On the 25th, I attended a funeral for Cookie Hurd. I saw that Cookie had a very big front page spread of her ceremony on the Virginia Gazette. A personal friend and someone who will be sorely missed. On a good note, I will tell folks who have been always asking me what's going on with the Wawa. What's going on with the Wawa? Right before the snowstorm, they managed to bury the gas tanks, so they're in the ground. And I went by, and the footers and all of the bases of the buildings are there, and all the piping is coming up. So it's coming out of the ground. So we may have the Wawa over on Monticello sometime soon. For this week, later on Thursday, the 27th, at the Rec Center at 7 p.m., I'm going to hold a town hall meeting, and look forward to seeing constituents out there to hear their feedback and their concerns, try to give them a quick update on things going on in the county, but mostly it's a listening session to hear back what people are going to be telling us. And one of the things that I did want to remind everybody is that as we started this budget season, and I mentioned it at the first meeting, I've mentioned it again today with Mr. Stevens, and as we go through the budget process, I think we need to be kept in the loop about what the impact of federal spending is at the local level, because it's pretty camouflaged. It comes, not much of it's direct, a lot of it comes through the state, and it comes into various areas of our local government. And so I think we need to be painfully aware of where it is and how it gets to us, because if there's any of it that gets cut off, we have to be able to make decisions on our budget in the budgeting process on how we're going to accommodate that. So it's part of the preparation, I think, for this budgeting cycle. So with that, I think we go to the reports of the county administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Nothing overly specific. I do want to say thank you to our employees for their service during the snow, their response, their putting up with closing and openings and differing hours. We've done that several times in the last 4 to 6 weeks. I'd also like to thank the community. I know we inconvenience people when the rec center is not open or when our offices aren't available for them to do business. I appreciate that we have a community that understands that and has been very accommodating of that as well, because I know that has an impact on them. And I hope we're through the winter. Time will tell on that, but I know for me, one snow a year is enough, and so this time we've overdone it for the year. But I do want to say thank you to our staff and the community for their response to the events that we've had in the community. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I think we are now down to, if I can flip the page on the script. You look for a motion to adjourn until April the 5th, March 11th, I'm sorry, 5 p.m., March 11th, 2025 for a regular meeting. So motion, Mr. Stevens, call the roll.
Aye.
Ms. Null, Ms. Larson, Mr. McGlynn.
Aye.
Mr. Rice.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we are adjourned.